I'd like to congratulate the Salvation Army on 150 years of service, of contribution to the community, of making a difference. And I would like to thank all of you individually for the service you give, the contribution you make, the dedication you show, the difference that you have made to the lives of millions of people, not just in this country, but round the world. The great Indian leader Gandhi once said, "If you're in any doubt about what you should do, recall the face of the poorest, the most vulnerable person you've ever met, and you'll be in no doubt where your duty lie." And I believe that over 150 years, this is exactly what the Salvation Army has done, helping those who cannot easily help themselves, helping those people in the greatest need, giving people hope, and giving people the sense that they can make a difference in their own lives in the same way that the Salvation Army is making a difference through the way you live your lives. And I want to talk today about the most needy people in the world, the people who are the most vulnerable, those who are lost without the help that we can give. And I'm referring to the 58 million children of primary school age who are not even given the chance to go to school in this world today. We take it for granted in most countries that every single child has the right to education. But round the world, even in the year 2015, despite all the commitments we've made that every child should have the right to education, there are more than 30 million girls who are not at school and nearly 30 million boys. And these are girls and boys who sometimes are in the worst possible situations, but who could be rescued if we could make sure they had a school place. 10 million children who are married at school age against their will, forced into marriages under laws in some countries and practices in some countries that are simply barbaric. 15 million or so children under the age of 14 who are forced into work, who instead of being at school are having to go out and in some cases making almost no wages for their family in doing so. And then there are the 500,000 girls and boys who are trafficked every year. And we see this most recently after the earthquake in Nepal, where the state radio of Nepal is broadcasting messages warning parents that those children who are on the streets because of the earthquake are in grave danger of being taken and seized and taken from Nepal into India, trafficked by people sellers. And then, of course, we have the girls who are discriminated against simply because they're girls. Malala, the young girl in Pakistan who took up the case of girls and their right to education and then was shot by people who would not admit that in the modern world every child should have the right to go to school, but particularly girls should never be discriminated against. And these are the young girls and boys that we're trying to help get into school. And we need your support in making sure that the world knows that in 2015 it is completely unacceptable that there are boys and girls who are denied that basic right to education. And even if they are at school, in many cases to be denied the right to be literate because the courses and the classes are not good enough. And that's why we're running a petition Up for School, a petition that is encouraging millions of people around the world to sign up, hopefully to be the biggest petition that's ever been done, hopefully with the signatures not just of yourself, but of the many people you've asked to help us. And I want to thank the Salvation Army for what you have done to raise people's awareness that this petition is one that can be signed and can make a difference, and when sent to the United Nations can remind people that they've made a pledge that every child should be at school, but we're not yet honouring it, and yet for a small amount of money, in some cases only $200 per year per child, we could honour that commitment. Now, I've been going around the world to try to make governments in countries where there are so many children out of school aware of what needs to be done. I went to South Sudan, which is one of the most troubled countries in the world. The newest country because it became a separate state, but a country that is in the midst of a civil war. And I went to meet some of the children in a village just outside Juba, which is the capital city of South Sudan. And I went into a group of young women who were girls and who had been married very early and who had children. And I asked them what were their dreams for their children and what did they want most of all. And I might have thought they would have said shelter. And I might have thought of said as refugees, people who'd run from one country to another, they needed food and nutrition and healthcare. But they said that most of all they wanted for their children the chance of education. And then I went to the only village school that existed, a small one-classroom hut. And in that classroom, there were only around 20 children. The classroom was itself, as a prefabricated hut, too small to house any more children than that, with the 2 teachers they had and the very, very small collection of books. But you know, my abiding memory of being in that classroom in Juba, outside the capital city, was this, that outside, and there were 2 portal windows that you could look into the school, there were more than 100 boys and girls standing, looking inside to an education they couldn't have because there were simply not enough school classroom places for them. And I then went to meet a mother, and that mother had twins of 8. And she told me she had had to make a choice about which of the 2 twins could go to school because there were not enough places for all the children in that small village. And that's just one example of how thousands and then millions of children are being denied the chance for education, and where we can actually do something about it by our efforts. And so I also went to Abuja in Nigeria, the capital city, and I went to a school outside Abuja. And funnily enough, when I arrived there, so too did Bono, the famous pop singer. And he was visiting Nigeria, and he had been directed to this school. And you know, this school was run by aid agencies, money provided by us, but it was dilapidated. It was falling apart, corrugated iron roofs, no computers, no desks, children sitting on the floor. And yet, when we talked to the children and asked them, as you do, what do they want to be? Someone said they wanted to be an engineer, another an airline pilot, someone a doctor, someone a nurse, someone a teacher. Nobody wanted to be a politician, of course, and to Bono's surprise, nobody wanted to be a pop singer. But these children were being denied the right to the best education that we could have given them because the standard of the school facilities was so bad. And then I found out that the school was losing pupils, and it was losing pupils to our madrasas up the road, preaching an extremist brand of religion, telling children that violence was one way to get their aims in the future. And because we were not doing enough ourselves, these children were now prey to extremist influences in the heart of Nigeria, one of the reasons why we have some of the terrorist problems we have today. So it's important to us for security reasons, but it's also important for morality that we provide the opportunities to education for young children who are without. One of the great things I managed to do was to entertain Nelson Mandela when he had his 90th birthday party in London. And it was a celebration of his work, but it was also, as befits Nelson Mandela, a demand that he had that we help him finance a children's hospital in South Africa to deal with some of the black children who were not getting proper medical attention at that time. And what Nelson Mandela said that night was that his message was one of hope for the future, one of hope that having climbed one mountain in his life, that he'd ended apartheid, he was now climbing another mountain, and that was to end child poverty by giving young children the opportunity for health and education that they were so sadly without. This is the great moral mission of our time. We have neglected the needs of so many children in different parts of the world, so that there are more than 20 million child refugees who are without the chance of any education at the moment. We have fought for big causes in the last 50 years, but this cause remains to be one that is achieved. And that is the right of every child in the modern world to go to school. We can be the first generation in history where every single boy and girl goes to school, the first generation to achieve the goal of universal education. But we cannot achieve it without your help. I do ask you, in all the work that you already do, to put the cause of children's education around the world across to the many members and supporters and followers that you have. I do ask you to continue this great work that you've embarked upon, asking people to sign the petition that will be given to the Secretary General of the United Nations. Together we can make a difference. The Salvation Army has dealt with so many evils over the years and removed them by the great efforts of your members. I hope that together we can remove and eradicate yet one more evil from the world, because in the Christian future that I know you want to see, every child matters and every single child counts. Thank you very much.